What does it actually look like to go from learning bookkeeping to building a successful business? Today, I sat down with Max Emory to talk about exactly that. Max is a bookkeeper launch graduate who went on to become the founder and CEO of Time Capital Bookkeeping and the founder of Time Capital University, and also the host of the Millionaire Bookkeeper podcast. We talked about how he got started, the challenges he faced along the way, the software and systems he relies on today, and the advice he'd give to someone who's thinking about starting a bookkeeping business now. Whether you're just exploring bookkeeping or you're ready to land your first client, I think you'll find a lot of value in this conversation. So let's jump in. Max, thank you so much for joining me today and just giving us some time here. And I want to take the time to hear your story, but I want people to also see where a business like bookkeeping can take them and who this is for. And I really just do this to highlight some stories from real people that have been through this, that are entrepreneurs or entrepreneur minded, and just to highlight their stories, because I think everybody has a story, and I think most people have a story worth telling, and hopefully that there's somebody out there that can resonate with where you've been and where you're going. So thank you so much for joining.
I love it. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Jaime. This is huge. Yeah. As you know, I'm a Bookkeeper Launch student, graduate, entered that program back in 2021, summer 2021. But so, this is very, very special to me to, come and speak with you. So yeah, kind of the journey, we'll take it back, kind of what led up to that. So my background, funny enough, is actually mechanical engineering coming out of college. That's what I got my bachelor's in. I went and worked as a mechanical engineer for a little bit. And then I've had a lot of career switches in my short little professional life. And so pretty quickly I decided I wanted to join the Marine Corps. And so I went through the commissioning pipeline with that. That was a long journey. And I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. I was an artillery officer in the Marine Corps, worked on the fire support side as well. And, I'll talk a little bit about kind of my first entrepreneurial activities, I guess. And that really started while I was in the Marine Corps, funny enough. I had some downtime on deployment. I brought a couple of books with me. One of those books was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so I just devoured that. It totally blew my mind. I'm not from, an entrepreneurial type family, or any sort of that type of stuff. No real estate investing, anything like that. I had never even heard of it prior to reading that book, funny enough. And so I think I was 27 whenever I read that book. And so, yeah, that kind of blew my mind and started getting the gears turning. And so my first kind of entrepreneurial endeavor was investing in real estate on the side while I was still in the Marine Corps. So a few months later, once I got back to the States, I was already communicating, with realtors and that sort of thing. And I purchased my first investment property and, off to the races with that. I thought, I was listening to podcasts and watching YouTubes and just getting super deep into that industry. And I thought I was going to be a full-time real estate investor, coming out of the Marine Corps. I was like, I'm going to do that. That's going to be my path. It was, harder than I think I underestimated the level of difficulty. And so, my time's up in the Marine Corps. I ended up going back to engineering for a year. I had a wife at that point and went back to engineering, for a year to pay the bills. Still doing the real estate investing thing, but kind of figuring out for myself that I don't know if I want to do this full time, and networking with a lot of other investors at meetups and stuff like that. That's super big in that industry. And I kept noticing a common pain point. It seemed like all the pain points I heard from, these investors that were at a similar level to me kind of rooted back to bookkeeping. It was the financials aren't super duper clear. They're having trouble making really good decisions, which if you see behind me, that banner says decision ready financials. Cause we need to be looking at our financials, right? And making really good decisions based off of that data. And so that light bulb just kind of went off where I was like, man, I've always been super big into personal finance. I don't have an accounting degree. I'm not a CPA, anything like that, but I've always done my personal finances. And at that time, I was also doing the bookkeeping for my personal real estate portfolio and also a portfolio I had with a partner as well. So, I was kind of dipping into that lightly. And so I was like, maybe I can just do this and, offer that service to other investors. And so doing a bunch of searching around and I guess kind of before I made that decision, like, okay, I'm going to start a bookkeeping business. I was also looking for something that's like super duper flexible, scalable, flexible. I can do it as a solo person, or I can scale it into, a larger company with staff and, all the whole thing. That flexibility component, the location, being independent of a location, you can do it from anywhere in the world. You can work with pretty much anybody located anywhere in the world. That just really appealed to me. The recurring revenue portion of it, as far as the business model for a bookkeeping business, that monthly recurring revenue, like that really appealed to me, the stability of that and the scalability of that as well. And so I was like, okay, cool. It's settled. I'm starting a bookkeeping business. And just through that research, honestly, arriving at that decision, I had already come across Bookkeeper Launch. I was getting targeted, with the ads and all that. And so all of that was working. And so I purchased the course, you guys have a bunch of awesome courses. I purchased that like base course. And I mean, honestly, that's what launched everything. And so that was in, 2021 with the engineering gig. I was still doing that. I gave myself like 12 months to the day, and I was supposed to quit that job on that day. It was December 17th, 2021. And I was taking Bookkeeper Launch in the summer of 2021. And so I had to start moving pretty quickly, with that business, man. But I did quit. Though on that day and went full time into the business and haven't looked back since. So I'll stop it there and, and
yeah. I think there's a lot to unpack there. Number one, is there a point, was there a straw that broke camel's back that you said, I have to do this. I can't move forward with whatever I've been doing? And if so, what was that?
Yeah. Just any job I ever had, I was a good employee, but it was always in the back of my mind of like, I don't have any ownership in this. And, this isn't, it's given me a paycheck, but like, this isn't going to take my family to the next level financially, or even security wise. I always viewed employment as kind of a security risk to myself. A lot of people view that as like, that's the most secure thing you can do. Secure job, it's safe, you have your benefits, you're good to go for life. But I just never viewed it that way. Even before reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad and kind of getting those entrepreneurial ideas, I never really viewed jobs that way. And so, I think it just comes down to, entrepreneurs have a certain personality type as well. I think that played a lot into it, but yeah, I just never, and I think a key component to this question is like, I never thought I could reach my potential in, some sort of employment. I did a lot of good stuff in the Marine Corps and that was an awesome experience, but it was very apparent to me that I wasn't going to reach my potential if I stayed there. Same thing with the engineering job. And it kind of just clicked of like, I really want that flexibility, that freedom, that ownership. There's a lot of sacrifices that come with entrepreneurship, but at the end of the day, you have 100% ownership. If you're successful, it's your fault. If you're unsuccessful, it's your fault. It's all your fault.
Yeah. And so I've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad a while back. It's a really good book because it's all about your mindset. And I think that's so important in entrepreneurship. And just because I've read it and I know a little bit about the author also that is heavily involved in real estate, is that what kind of led you to kind of go into this, that industry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I saw the power of it, for myself once I started purchasing rental properties and doing that whole thing for a few years. But yeah, as far as picking like a niche, for the bookkeeping firm, my first client was not a real estate investor. It was a local, shop owner that I met, literally going into his shop, developing a relationship with him. And then organically in conversation, bookkeeping just came up one day. And I was like, oh, I just started a bookkeeping business. Like we should work together. And that's how it happened. I think everybody after that has been a real estate investor, pretty much. Maybe for the exception of one or two adjacent industries to real estate, but like contractors and that sort of thing. But pretty much every client after that's been in the real estate. But yeah, even, serving him, getting started with that, getting some cash flow into the business, extremely important, especially as I'm leading up to quitting my job and like I need to support myself and my wife, right? And not live on credit cards forever. So yeah, getting cash flow into the business, extremely important. That was the focus. But I knew I wanted wanted to, just niche down, and I knew I wanted real estate investors to be my niche because I had that intimate, like I call it like operator experience in that industry. And so I knew how the deals worked. I knew what investors cared about. I had a lot of investors already in my network from being an investor myself. I just knew operationally on an intimate scale, like how that industry works. And so I was like, it would be kind of dumb of me at this point not to make that my niche because I have I viewed it as a competitive advantage. And so for me, that's what it came down to. And the genuine interest in it. Like I was still interested in investing. I love putting deals together and just, just how the whole thing works. I'm genuinely interested in it. So that was a key component too.
Yeah. So what do you think is like a good lesson to take out of that for somebody that is maybe considering becoming a bookkeeping business owner? Because you see sometimes some contradictory advice on niching down immediately or when to niche down or if ever. And obviously you did at a very early stage in your business. And obviously that has worked out very well for you. So I'm curious what your advice would be to somebody that maybe doesn't have the background that you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as far as, to niche down or not, that's going to be up to the individual. Like I have, on the education side, I have students who are super niche down like I am. And then I have students who they have very intentionally not niche down because they did it before and it like bored them just to work with one industry. So like they kind of want that excitement of working with 10 different industries, 20 different industries. And maybe, maybe they have a different marketing system for getting clients for that as well. But for me, I immediately, and I think just people in general, like you get a lot of efficiency out of having a niche.
Right.
You can dial in your marketing like very narrow to where, whether it's social media or ads or, even that like SEO on your website and your Google business listing. And like, you can just dial in everything almost perfectly to where it makes it easier to find you and do business with you if you're talking to a very specific person. And so typically I'll advise in the beginning, you get business where you can get business. Like you have to get cash flow coming in because cash flow is going to keep you alive, right? Some people are in a different scenario, but especially if you're feeding your family with this money that you're making, like you have to get cash flow into the business. And so kind of what I did and what I recommend is all of my marketing efforts went to the specific group of people that I wanted to work with, which was a certain type, of real estate investor. And so make that as specific as you can, and talk directly to them through all of your marketing efforts. But if let's say a contractor or, even like a small medical practice or something like that comes across your desk in the very beginning, if you need clients, it may not be smart to say no to them, right? Like if you can reasonably serve them and you feel like you can do them justice, if I'm less than 10 clients, I would probably not say no to them. I would probably get them in the practice, get that cash flow, get that experience. You may figure out that, oh, I really like working with medical professionals. Like maybe I just niche down in that and get more medical professionals, so it's learning for you, it's cash flow for you. And then if you stick to that original niche that you picked for yourself, eventually you're going to get a lot of those. And then, you can find someone who niches in medical practices and do a handoff and, do your client a solid and get them out of your firm if you want to do that. But yeah, I mean, getting that cash flow in the business is the most important thing early on. That's going to give you the most amount of options and like keep you, surviving in the industry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I like your plan. You said you had a plan to basically quit your job within 6 months, you said, after being in business with your bookkeeping business. I guess this is always a tricky question when someone asks, I have this side gig, this bookkeeping side gig, but I also have a full-time job. When is the right time to move? And for you have an actual date. You gave it a date. But for someone that maybe doesn't have a date, they're chasing a dollar amount. And then once they reach that dollar amount, they tend to move that goalpost where they say, well, when I'm making $2,000 of monthly recurring income, maybe that's enough to at least quit my job and start working on the bookkeeping business full time. What do you suggest on that end? Like, it just seems like one of those things that no one's ever going to be truly ready. So I guess what I'm looking for is what would you tell somebody if they're asking you that?
That's super interesting because I literally just did this exact exercise with two of our students. finance. And they surprised me. They quit their jobs when they said they were going to, which is insane. Like you just don't see that a whole lot, because you kind of get cold feet or whatever, and you want to delay it because it is a big leap and it's a risk, and you have to do a lot of introspection. You have to ask yourself, like, am I truly cut out for this? Is this truly what I want? Does this fulfill my vision? Like, there's a lot that goes into it. But yeah, I typically, if somebody comes to me and asks that, where I start is like, what is your vision for your life? And is doing this going to fulfill that vision? Like, that's where everything starts, like, would you be better served not even having your own business and maybe just like working for someone else? Like, maybe that fulfills your vision. And that's a lot easier than starting your own business, to be honest. But if they're like, nope, I've got clients, it's a side hustle, I want to turn it into my full-time gig, I'm just having trouble, quitting my job, then for me, it comes down to finances, honestly, personal finances. And so, we kind of look at this from an advisory perspective, to where it's like, and what I did with myself too is like, how much, what is my monthly expenditure personally? So what do my monthly expenses look like? Is there anything I can cut to get that number lower? What are my fixed versus my variable? Just like standard, personal budget type stuff. And so we have that, that bottom number, that minimum number that we need to make after tax income. That's very important. Your income from your business, take out taxes. You have to account for that. And then what you have left over, you can live on that in the beginning. And so we get to that number. And then I'm, for this type of stuff, I really like Dave Ramsey's methods, emergency fund. Like, we want to have at least 3 to 6 months worth of runway, to where if you're not bringing in any business whatsoever, you have some runway to figure out how you can bring in business and then start getting that cash flow, and it's one of those things where, people want to be at their magic, monthly number before quitting their job. But that's really a personal thing. It comes down to risk tolerance. Like, I was not at that number when I quit my job. I supplemented with credit, and I was confident in myself that I could get to that number within a certain amount of months. And so I my runway was cash plus a little bit of credit. And then I had a solid plan for how I was going to acquire clients, essentially, very aggressively. So yeah, I think it just comes down to the personal finances and kind of what their outlay is, what their risk tolerance is. And it's kind of individual to the person, but definitely give yourself some sort of runway. Even if you have existing clients, like you need to give yourself some sort of financial runway.
I love that you used Dave Ramsey as an example. I love that you have these two polar opposite individuals that you've already mentioned in Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad. One of them is so anti-credit, and the other one's like, use credit as long as you're buying assets that are going to help you build wealth. I just love that you're taking the good from both and kind of creating a hybrid of that for where you did do that for yourself. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done that for years now. And with personal finance, I really love Dave Ramsey's methods. In the business and investing world, I really love Robert Kiyosaki's methods. So that's kind of in my mental, that's how I separate it.
As far as like bookkeepers go, if there is somebody that is looking to start a bookkeeping business, who do you think, what personality traits make a good bookkeeper? Are there any that you have that you think this is why I have been successful? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah. So, it kind of starts with, are you the type of person who wants to do bookkeeping? Like, if anybody's heard of the E-Myth, like that book, do you want to be the technician or do you want to be the business owner, the entrepreneur? It's kind of, and you can start being the technician and then kind of build yourself into that entrepreneur person. But that's kind of where we want to start. You have to be real with yourself. Like, do I want to just do I want to be the bookkeeper, which is a certain mindset, a certain personality type, a certain skill set, or do I want to like build a bookkeeping business that employs bookkeepers? Because those are way different things. And so how I started is I was the bookkeeper and then I built it into a business that employs bookkeepers. But some people, they want to stay the bookkeeper. And so, traits of that successful bookkeeper are going to be basically what we hire for. It's like customer service has to be there, integrity has to be there, like top tier communication. You don't have to be an extrovert, but you do need to like have top tier communication with your clients. Typical traits, like very analytical, right? Like spreadsheet type people, super detail oriented, like not missing anything within the books, like transactionally. But integrity is pretty high on that list, I would say. You don't need to enter any part of the professional financial industry unless you are a person of extreme integrity, because it's very easy to just do things that hurt people financially, if you're not a person of integrity in this industry. So, if you're a person who kind of wants to build that bookkeeping business, then that's going to be kind of, you have to have those entrepreneurial traits. Drive is a huge component of it, being able to focus, and typical entrepreneurs, like we suffer from something called shiny object syndrome. We're kind of like, oh, this looks good. This looks profitable. This looks like where the opportunity is. But you really need to be able to focus to like build something of value. So I think focus is huge, extreme ownership. There's a lot of good traits. Book that comes to mind as far as kind of assessing yourself is like, am I like where am I at on this kind of entrepreneurial scale, like personality wise, I think it was written by Gino Wickman. I think it's called The Entrepreneurial Elite. I may be wrong. But I think that book would probably be good to read just to kind of gauge yourself and be honest with yourself. But yeah, for me, it's kind of two different types of people who may start at the same place, but depending on what type of person you are, you're gonna develop into a different type of bookkeeper, essentially.
Awesome. Thank you. I have a couple of questions that kind of relate to each other. One is big topic. It's the hot topic. It's the thumbnail, like clickbaity word, AI. Everybody's using it. What do you think about the industry and where it's going with AI? And I want to follow that up with, if you could tell us your tech stack. There's bookkeepers that are watching this that they love a good tech stack. You said we have shiny object syndrome. So of course this is probably the part of the video that everybody's going to just skip to and watch. So this is going to be this will be good.
Yeah. Every conversation I have now with people like yourself, Jaime, just people in our industry, like a large portion of that conversation is AI. Like it goes there almost immediately now, and it's kind of taking over. I've recently spoken with, other people in the industry who lead, some of the largest bookkeeping and accounting conferences like in the country. They're all, and what we're seeing at our level, like we're all kind of seeing the same thing. Like AI is rapidly advancing every day. It's not even a weekly thing. I get a daily brief email rundown. I think it's called Rundown AI or something. So adopt that if you don't have it. Things are changing like crazy fast, like faster than they ever have. And that's true for our industry as well. It's getting to the point of like, it's not, can AI do this? It's like, how can AI do this? It's like, if you're doing something on a computer, AI can do it. You may not know how to get AI to do it, but AI can do it. I've had some crazy calls where other bookkeeping firm owners are demoing things that they're doing with AI. And I'm like, holy cow, I didn't know it could do all this stuff. I'm not a super techie guy. I like to hang out with techie people so that I can be in the know, but I'm not a super techie guy. And so I have to lean on other people for this stuff. But yeah, kind of my view on it is we have to use it to our advantage. Don't view it as like, oh, it's taking my job. If you're the type of person who's going to completely ignore it, it is going to take your job. It's, if you have a business, your business is going to suffer if you are not acknowledging AI's existence and like taking just baby steps to like know what it's about, know its capabilities, and just be aware. And so for us at Time Capital Bookkeeping, we use it heavily every day. It is not doing our bookkeeping yet. We're mainly trying right now. We're kind of in the phase of maximizing like the platforms we already use, QuickBooks, Double, a lot of these others, the Google Workspace, like all these things have their own AI component now. And so we're working to maximize the components within the platforms we already use. And so I do use, ChatGPT, Codex, we'll use Claude and Cowork and all these others as well. But I think just focusing on and maximizing what you already have at your disposal, because it is doing certain components of our bookkeeping. Double has a lot of really cool AI features that we're taking advantage of. And specifically their journal entry feature for someone who serves real estate people, their journal entry feature is a game changer, because there's a lot of statements we have to enter in that we used to do manually. Now AI does about 95% of that. And then we check its work and like correct any mistakes. And so that's kind of the phase that we're in. We are in no way trying to replace our team members with it. I know other firms who are doing that, and that's not how we're approaching this. We want it to expand our team members, their capabilities, the amount of accounts they can serve, how quickly we can do things for our clients are at the forefront of this. So can we make communication faster? Can we service requests faster? If we get a new client with a cleanup that used to take us 3 months, can we do that in 1 month and like just provide that top tier service? So can we provide custom KPI dashboards and stuff that we used to, we would have had to do that manually in some sort of platform, but now like AI can do most of that for us and we can provide that to our client. People who are listening to this, all of this has to be done in a very secure way because we are in the financial industry, right? So you can't mess around with integrating outside platforms with like your client's data if you're not doing it in the correct way and if your clients aren't aware of it. And so this stuff needs to make its way into your engagement letters and conversations with clients. But yeah, I mean, we could talk about this a lot. I'm gonna cut it here, before I keep blabbing.
Yeah. It goes back to that shiny object syndrome. Anytime there's something new, like I want to just hear about it and see what am I missing? Is somebody else in the industry doing something that I haven't heard of yet? So I always love to hear people's perspective. I want to end with a couple of things here. I always like to ask our guests to tell us a story of a time where either in business or just in your personal life, like life handed you the short end of the straw and how you got out of it.
I was not expecting that, Jaime. But an immediate scenario did pop into my head, and it was right at the beginning, within the first couple of years that I quit my job, started this business. I was also still involved in real estate at that time, but we had my real estate partner and we had a couple of deals, larger deals than we typically did. We were starting to get out of our comfort zone a little bit and experimenting with some other, just bigger assets. And those two deals went very sideways at the same time. COVID actually contributed a lot to the sidewaysness, but just everything that happened during that time period. But yeah, so financially, from that side, things were going very, very sideways. And that was right around the time that I quit that engineering job. I went full time into this bookkeeping business. My business was it was on track with what I was trying to accomplish, in that first 6 months. And so it was doing well, but I had this other thing that was just sucking of that goodness, that good financial, good cash flow and everything from the bookkeeping business. It just all got sucked away into this other venture that was going totally sideways. Ended up losing a lot of money in those couple of ventures. And then at the same time, things were going sideways with my wife's family. She had a lot of hardship happening with her family at that time. And we were the support system for that as well. And so, man, that period of time was extremely chaotic, extremely stressful. We were newly married at that time. I was a new entrepreneur at that time. It was just it was nuts, man. I could talk about that time period for a long time, but yeah, kind of, there's really no magic pill or magic tactic, I kept my head down. I stayed committed to the course and I just worked my way out of that. We kind of just I pulled money from wherever I could pull money, including my bookkeeping business that was, doing decent at that time. And, it took a couple of years to get through that. I had to sell off good assets, good cash flowing assets with equity that I didn't want to sell. I had to sell those to get out of that sticky situation. I stayed on my bookkeeping business. It was really the bookkeeping business, to be honest, that was kind of the savior throughout those years, because it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, right? It's a business, there's difficulty with it, but
a lot of ups and downs,
Yeah, but it was the income from the bookkeeping business was more stable than any other source of income, and it just continued to build. And during that same time period is when I started to hire people to do things within the business as well, hiring bookkeepers, hiring, a pseudo operations, a guy I was going to build into an operations manager. And so, yeah, a lot happened to that time period. It was really it was my wife's support that was huge. And it was just keeping my head down and working, with the time that I had to work kind of outside of, supporting her family and supporting other things that I needed to support. So yeah, I don't know if that's the answer people want. Yeah. I don't.
I love it. I recently heard a quote, and this is what made me think of it. Your story made me think of it, where like confidence doesn't mean that you think you're going to always win. It's that you know that you're going to be okay even if you lose. And I think that's, if there's ever a story that encompasses that as yours, that you went through this hardship, that I think by most measures you would say you lost a couple of battles there, right? But at the end of the day, you were okay. You like you said, you put your head down, got to work, and made it happen anyways.
Yeah, I love it, man. I was not expecting to dive into that story.
Lastly, I want to end with this part. You've mentioned that you have students as well, so I know that you have your bookkeeping business. Tell us what other ventures you have outside of that. So it sounds like you have a course. Tell us a little bit about that and who it's for, and I guess how to reach you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the kind of our what we've had for a couple years now. It's this school community. So it's a school. We house everything in a school community now. It's called Bookkeeping for REI. So if you just go to skol.com, school.com, literally just go to the search and type in bookkeeping, it's the first community that'll pop up. And so this community contains a couple of different courses, lots of templates, tools, more importantly, a lot of bookkeeping professionals who serve real estate investors and adjacent industries to the real estate investing industry. And so that's just a huge support system and, idea machine that comes out of the community aspect. But yeah, we essentially teach bookkeepers how to master bookkeeping for real estate investors in 90 days. We have a free 7-day trial, and basically it's Time Capital Bookkeeping's internal playbook. That's essentially what you get. It's how we do things and, what has made us successful with what we do. But something I, haven't talked about a whole lot because it's not even launched yet. So I'm launching a second community that roots directly from what our current communities or current community members really need. And it's helping introverted bookkeepers attract and close clients they love to work with within 90 days. And so in the bookkeeping industry, typically, we're introverts. We're not super big on the marketing and selling. There's a lot of psychological stuff going on with that. And so this is an entire community. It's called GoPro Bookkeeping. So again, it's hosted in school, SKOL, GoPro Bookkeeping. It's launching August 2nd, 2026. And so, yeah, all this kind of started, I think it was like April of 2023, somewhere around there. Actually, in the Bookkeeper Launch Facebook group, I kept having people reach out to me they wanted mentorship. They wanted to know how we were doing things at Time Capital Bookkeeping. And so that's where all this stuff came from.
Awesome. Love it. And we'll put links under it in the description and for your course there. Max, what's the best way to connect with you if people are watching and listening and they want to get to know more about you? Do you have any social media handles?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Just Max Emory on Facebook. And then there's on Instagram and all the other socials, it's Millionaire Bookkeeper. That's the handle. And Jaime has actually been a guest on the Millionaire Bookkeeper podcast. So make sure to go hear those conversations because they're super duper helpful for bookkeepers. But yeah, that's it, Jaime.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put all of those under the video as well. Max, first of all, thank you for your service. It actually wasn't something that I was aware of that you served. So thank you. And I want to appreciate you for your time and just kind of giving us an insight of what it's like starting and running a bookkeeping firm.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jaime. I appreciate your support, man. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This was this is where I learned bookkeeping, right? So I'm very honored to be on here. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.